To the jury, my peers, my colleagues, and my mentor, hello. I am BASABE, Batch 118 of Renewal Architecture, here to present to you my thesis. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. If a tree falls in a forest and no one was there to hear it, does it make a sound? Some of you may think that the answer to this question is straightforward, but there's actually two ways of going about this question. As defined through physics, some may say that sound is merely vibrating air, in which case the tree falling does make a sound. But if by sound you mean the conscious noise we experience from the vibration of the air, then the answer would be no, because no one was there to hear the impact of the tree when it hit the ground. There is actually no definite answer to this question. Both may be deemed correct, depending on how you look at it. It was all about perspective, which is the purpose of this question. This was for me to show you that things can be looked at from different perspectives. For context, at the early stages of my research on the discrimination against the Filipino-Islamic community in Manila, I was met with doubts on whether or not this issue is substantial enough to be used as a topic, because the general consensus is that discrimination, especially towards different religious groups, is not as rampant here in the Philippines as I am making it out to be. But this perspective comes from the majority, who is usually safe from such treatment, and therefore cannot truly know whether or not such issues exist. So in this video, I will be presenting multiple layers of this issue, how it affects the Filipino-Islamic community, and how it can be remediated through architecture. The Philippines is a country known for a variety of things: breathtaking beaches, hospitality, cultural diversity, and so on. But despite being a country of great diversity, in terms of religion, the Philippines remains to be amongst only a select few Asian countries to have a predominantly Christian population. To put things into perspective, this is the division of religion in the Philippines. It is apparent that there is an unbalanced division when it comes to it, and this is a direct result of Spanish colonization. Going back to religion, a fact rarely talked about is that Islam was actually the oldest recorded monotheistic religion in the country. This only changed with the arrival of the Spanish, who forcibly converted the majority of both Luzon and Visayas to Christianity. The Muslim population in Mindanao, however, somewhat succeeded in resisting this violent nationwide baptism, which consequently ignited the war between them and the Spanish. This can be equated as being the beginning of the hate and prejudice towards the Filipino-Islamic community, which continues to manifest itself through the negative effects of colonialism up till the present day. Moreover, theories such as the broken windows theory, which is section 2.3.3 in my thesis book, concludes that the state of the built environment is detrimental to how residents of that community are perceived and treated. And so the aforementioned historical origin of discrimination against this particular community becomes a precursor as to why they're put in such poorly built, unpleasant environments. This then subliminally worsens how they are perceived and therefore are treated badly, creating a cycle of never-ending discrimination. So in short, the statement of the problem is that the Filipino-Islamic community, to this day, experiences discrimination based on their religion, despite us being liberated from the Spanish, from which this hate and prejudice originate. Along with this, the state of the built environment in which their communities are situated perpetuates a negative perception of this community, which further heightens the islamophobia that they are already experiencing because of colonialism. This socio-cultural problem, which is unfortunately subliminally heightened by architecture, should have never survived for this long. But I digress. The goal of this study is to identify the historical, socio-cultural, and architectural reasonings behind the discrimination and Islamophobia perpetrated against the Filipino-Islamic community. This study also aims to explore architectural interventions to help alleviate their community of the negative perceptions perpetuated upon them by non-Muslims. and to provide a safer, community-based environment for their community to thrive. The objectives of this proposal are as follows. Now, this research, as stated earlier, will be limited to architectural interventions and design solutions that will simultaneously improve the overall quality of architecture in Filipino-Islamic neighborhoods, as well as create an environment that helps their community to rid themselves of the negative perceptions cast upon them. Moreover, this project is site-specific, but can and shall be used as a basis for change for other Filipino-Islamic communities that are experiencing the same issues. This proposal is also limited by the willingness of non-Muslim Filipinos to be educated on the issues being tackled revolving Islam in general. Moving on to the dialectics of this paper, starting with the hypothesis, community-based design solutions will create a window of opportunities for the Filipino-Islamic community to both thrive as a prominent culture group as well as erase the baseless stigma against them. The antithesis to this, however, is that creating and proposing community-based architectural design solutions to erase the stigma against the Filipino-Islamic community is futile, because the discrimination that they face is not solely due to the built environment they are situated in. And lastly, the synthesis of this paper, identifying and acknowledging the issues within the area occupied by the Filipino-Islamic community in Quiapo through the broken windows theory will aid in both acknowledging and addressing said issues, as well as creating community-centered architectural interventions and design solutions using the busy streets theory. This will provide a built environment specifically catered to the community's needs. It will also aid in the erasure of the stigma against their community, which causes the prejudice and discrimination that they have and continue to experience up to the present day. A more extensive discussion of this issue along with topics not explicitly mentioned in this video can be found within Chapter 2 of my thesis book. Chapter 2 covers topics ranging from the aforementioned history of discrimination against the Filipino-Islamic community and its modern society manifestations, proposed laws that can potentially lead to a more anti-discriminatory society but has unfortunately not been picked up by the Philippine government, and case studies revolving around successful adaptations of the concepts of multiculturalism in international cities, as well as theories that encapsulate the discussions being conducted. Moving on to frameworks. There's a total of 7 frameworks within this study. The first theoretical framework to be discussed is the conflict theory. Conflict theory by Karl Marx theorizes that society is in a state of perpetual conflict for limited resources. Consequently, these divisions create a superior versus inferior divide, which enables further conflict to arise through discrimination because of the nature of such a relationship between two opposing groups. This framework is the conflict theory specifically in the context of religion and religious discrimination. However, with this framework, the discrimination found through this framework is innate human behavior, which can be attributed to several factors. Fortunately though, the discrimination caused by these factors, or lack thereof, can be prevented when intergroup interaction is successfully integrated within society through policies and laws that promote and uphold the concept of multiculturalism. Speaking of multiculturalism, it is a concept in which a society is in a state where cultural diversity is not only recognized, but also protected, promoted, and celebrated, whether at a national or community level. This encourages culture sharing between groups and builds communal respect as well as both tolerance and acceptance towards each other, which ultimately prevents intergroup discrimination. As mentioned earlier, the broken windows theory, developed by George Kelling and James Q. Wilson, refers to the cycle of disorder which is ironically perpetuated by disorder as well. Disorder of any sort, left untreated, leads to community withdrawal, which lowers the social control of the community and subsequently attracts criminals towards their area, and thus increasing both the crime and disorder present in the area, starting the perpetual cycle of disorder. In contrast to the broken windows theory, the busy streets theory is the hypothesis that an environment that is well maintained and cared for creates a sense of safety and allows for neighborly and/or communal bonds to prosper. It also promotes the idea that the neighborhood or the general area is a worthy investment. All of these allow for the overall improvement in the environment, which ultimately prevents for disorders to take place. On to the conceptual framework. This displays how all of the previously discussed theories and concepts interconnect to create the thought process behind the overall idea of the study. The social issues experienced by the Filipino-Islamic community, as it turns out, can be categorized into two groups, sociological and architectural. Both categories can explain the reasonings behind the issues, as well as provide the community with solutions that can be implemented through design. All of these are interconnected either through discrimination or diversity. Ultimately, the implementation and integration of these theories into communities in need of change shall be key to the proposed urban renewal development process. The methodology to be used in this study is split into either data gathering or a qualitative research approach and shall flow as follows. Site selection process. A straightforward criteria composed of only 5 points were used in determining the chosen site. With the limited number of Filipino-Islamic communities in Manila, the choices for eligible sites or communities were down to two options: Muslim town in Quiapo or Maharlika village in Taguig. The standard SWOT analysis was conducted for both sites, and the findings of that analysis, along with the site criteria discussed earlier, it was found that Muslim town in Quiapo, Manila was the better suited site for this proposed study. As part of a more in-depth analysis of the chosen site, the road networks that interact with and are found within the site have been identified, along with the landmarks present should there be any. As for the current conditions of the site, the analysis focused more on the zoning and existing disorders within the site. As displayed in the current zoning map, the site is riddled with mixed-use zones integrated with commercial zones, leaving little to no room for separate residential areas where communities can thrive. Most of what's considered homes on this site are situated on top of businesses or are in the form of tiny apartment buildings along the commercial zones. The separate residential zones, as highlighted in the map, are shanties situated either in between abandoned lots or along the creek, which unfortunately contributes to the worsening of the water condition of Estero de San Miguel. As for the disorders, as displayed through the photos, although there is in fact a community that has grown used to living in these conditions, it is clear that they are suffering from the presence of disorders, may it be physical or social. So, as for the proposed strategies for this site, starting with the zoning, it was important to me that the streets were kept almost the same way as it was found to instill a sense of familiarity amidst all of the big changes that this project entails. All of the streets within the site, along with the roads that interact around and through the site, have only been reconfigured to a clearer grid pattern, which is aligned with the direction of the already existing Masjid al-Dahab. It is worth noting that the direction in which the masjid is facing plays an important role in the way that the prayers are done, and so keeping its orientation as it is would be of great benefit to the community. Commercial zones will be situated towards the outer edges of the site to allow for businesses to still exist within the vicinity without disrupting the community residing within the site. This will keep unnecessary traffic and noise from entering the site. The mixed-use blocks are to be considered as the transition from commercial zones to residential areas. Businesses, along with apartment-style homes, will be found within these zones. The addition of communal spaces not only contributes towards the beautification of the site, but also provides spaces that allow the community to build better neighborly bonds amongst themselves. Moreover, these spaces will create a space where outsiders may visit to immerse themselves within the community as a form of intergroup interaction. And lastly, the residential areas shall be in the innermost zone of the site, where it is the quietest, seeing as it is the furthest zone from Quezon Boulevard. This will also allow for most of the residential homes to be in close proximity to the masjid for their convenience should they opt to pray there. Here are some additional proposals that showcase a glimpse of the potential that this project has should it push through. A more comprehensive and detailed micro-design proposal shall be presented as part of my ARCDS 10 final output. This includes, but is not limited to, housing projects, commercial development proposals, and policy making, among other things. I hope I have shown you enough in this video to be able to continue the study in the upcoming, hopefully, final term. Once again, my name is BASABE. This is ANTAY, Urban Renewal as a Catalyst for Social Change for the Filipino-Islamic Community in Quiapo, Manila, by utilizing the busy streets theory through the lens of multiculturalism. Thank you.